The air in rural Georgia in 1850 pressed down like a heavy, suffocating blanket, laden with the scent of damp earth and the lingering sweetness of overripe magnolia. It was a weight not just on the cotton fields stretching endlessly across the landscape, but on the very souls of the men who toiled there. The Blackwood plantation stood as a monument to this oppressive era, its towering white pillars gleaming under a perpetually bruised sky, a beacon of wealth and authority that seemed to absorb all light and hope around it. Inside, Mr. Silas Blackwood sat in the drawing room, a man built on the brittle foundations of Southern aristocracy, his usual mask of confident composure shadowed by a subtle, unnerving tension. The scent of fine cigar smoke clung to the heavy velvet drapes, and a financial ledger lay open before him, ignored, while the only sound was the insistent tick-tock of the grandfather clock, each strike marking a moment closer to an inevitable reckoning. His thoughts were not on cotton yields or ledger totals, but on the plantation's newest acquisition, Cain. Cain was no ordinary man. He was a force of nature, standing perhaps 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that strained the seams of his coarse linen shirt and hands that seemed capable of bending the world itself. Among the other enslaved people, he was both feared and whispered about, yet his demeanor was marked by an unnerving, impenetrable silence. He had arrived only 3 weeks earlier, purchased from a struggling planter in the Carolinas under mysterious circumstances, bringing nothing but his terrifying physique and eyes that hinted at knowledge of a darkness too profound for ordinary human understanding. This afternoon, Silas was expecting the return of his wife, Elelanena Blackwood, from Savannah, and he knew that her presence would transform the tension in the house into something almost tangible. Elelanena was beautiful, precise, and cold, a woman whose curiosity bordered on obsession, not in science or art, but in the examination of power, control, and human response. Silas knew, with a knot of dread twisting his stomach, that Cain was the perfect subject for her restless and dangerous intellect. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his reverie. Marcus, the long-serving foreman, appeared, his loyalty tempered by cautious unease. "Master Silas," he said lowly, "the carriage is on the road. Mrs. Elelanena will be here shortly." Silas nodded, running a hand through his perfectly combed hair. "And Cain?" "In the new shed, sir, as you ordered. He has eaten, but he waits silently, not uttering a word." Silas instructed Marcus to prepare Cain with fresh clothing, ensuring he would be presentable for his wife's inspection. Marcus hesitated, voice trembling slightly. "Master, forgive me, but that man is different. Even the other hands avoid him. There's a quiet about him. It doesn't feel natural, like a storm gathering." Silas dismissed the concern with a gesture, pride and fear mingling in equal measure. "Superstition, Marcus. He is a man, yes, but a broken one. That is all. Go." From the tall drawing-room window, Silas watched as the Blackwood carriage rolled to a stop beneath the long, oak-lined drive. Elelanena stepped down, a vision in silk, every motion commanding attention with the sharp precision of a finely honed blade. Silas met her at the base of the grand staircase, performing the ritual of greeting, taking her hand in a perfunctory kiss. "The journey was exhausting," she said, voice smooth but cold. "Did you acquire it?" Silas understood immediately. She did not mean merchandise, she meant Cain. "Yes, Elelanena, he is here, Cain. He is everything you requested and more, a colossal man." Her eyes sparked with a predatory interest, a thrill of anticipation that sent a shiver down Silas's spine. They moved through the house toward the back quarters where Cain awaited. Silas felt a distinct separation in that moment. He moved with purpose, born of control and obligation. She moved with a dark curiosity born of philosophical obsession. Cain stood before them, massive and silent, a mountain of flesh and muscle barely contained by his clothing. Elelonena approached, circling him with the clinical fascination of a scholar studying an untouched specimen. She stopped, looking up at his face, the contrast between her delicate frame and his immense presence stark and unsettling. "Cain," she said softly, dangerously. He did not move or speak, a deliberate, unreadable calm that made the air itself feel brittle with tension. "The experiments begin tonight, Silas," she declared, voice measured. "Not in the fields, not in the cabins, but in the chamber. We will observe him there." Silas felt a chill creep through him, his mind unable to reconcile the intentions of his wife with the reality of Cain's imposing presence. He had bought a man, a force of nature, for her curiosity, and now that force would be contained in his home, under his roof, under their control, or so he thought. Even as Silas protested, warning of Cain's immense strength and unpredictable nature, Elelonena dismissed him. "He is property, a tool," she said sharply, ice in her voice. "He is here to serve our purposes, Silas. I want to see the limits of human endurance, and I will watch closely." Her perfume overpowered the stale air of the room as she leaned forward, her presence dominating the space. Silas's eyes flicked to Cain, and for the briefest moment he noticed a shift in the giant's gaze, an empty, calculating recognition that set his nerves on edge. The grandfather clock struck 6, its chimes echoing through the house like a judgment. The real master of the plantation had arrived, and the unease in the household shifted from fields and ledger books into the bedroom itself, the stage for Elelenena's unfolding experiment. As night fell, the household descended into a near-oppressive silence. The chirping of crickets felt insistent and mocking, and the oil lamps flickered uncertainly in the thick, humid air. The master bedroom, once a sanctuary of intimacy, had become a theater of psychological dominance. Elelonena, in dark velvet, sat at her vanity, brushing her hair with slow, deliberate motions, each stroke part of her calculated performance. Silas pretended to watch the moonlight on the drive outside, though his gaze continually returned to the reflection of his wife. She spoke finally, her voice flat and commanding, reminding him of his position and the reality of their dominion. Cain's silence, massive and unwavering, was the instrument of her design. The arrival of Cain to the room marked the beginning of a tension that seemed almost physical, pressing against the skin, the chest, the mind itself. He stood exactly where directed, a tower of muscle and motionless restraint, while Elelonena moved through her calculated rituals, testing the boundaries of presence, authority, and power. Every small action she performed, every subtle inflection of her voice was observed by Cain, whose slight shifts in posture and the faintest flickers of muscle beneath his skin betrayed a contained, almost terrifying strength. Silas realized with a sickening awareness that the experiment extended beyond his wife alone. Cain was studying them, cataloging every subtle expression, every gesture of control and vulnerability. Hours passed, marked by quiet, tense observation, until Elelonena finally instructed Silas to extinguish the candelabra. The room plunged into near darkness, the spectral glow of Cain's white tunic, a stark, unyielding presence in the gloom. Shadows twisted and stretched, the tension thickening until it became suffocating. Silas, lying beside his wife, felt the weight of the giant's presence, the absolute, silent power of a being who could not be fully owned, fully measured, or fully contained. Every beat of the night, every sigh of wind through the oaks, every flicker of candlelight outside seemed to echo the truth. The Blackwood plantation was no longer merely a house or a farm, but a stage for the relentless, inscrutable will of those who understood the limits of power, and the enduring strength of those who refused to bend. Cabin's open door revealed an abundance of supplies that seemed strangely out of place given their situation. When he asked to inspect the property, Mercy agreed to show him the main cabin and the nearby outbuildings, but carefully avoided the hillside behind the homestead, where several heavy wooden doors were built into the rock face. The breakthrough in understanding the Caldwell case came less through careful planning and more through desperate circumstance and extraordinary survival. On September 12, 1899, a man stumbled into Harrison, Arkansas in the early morning hours. His clothes were torn and filthy, his body covered with infected wounds that spoke of days crawling through the wilderness. He collapsed outside Dr. Marcus Henderson's house, barely conscious and burning with fever. Recognizing the urgency, the doctor had him carried inside immediately for treatment. The man's injuries included deep cuts on his wrists and ankles consistent with restraints, severe malnutrition suggesting prolonged captivity, and infected wounds on his legs likely sustained during a desperate escape over rocky terrain and thick undergrowth. As Dr. Henderson worked to stabilize him, the man drifted in and out of feverish consciousness, speaking in fragments that initially seemed delirious. Yet certain phrases repeated with alarming consistency: the breeding room, the sister's cellar, chains in the dark, other men screaming. Henderson realized that, fever or not, these words indicated something far worse than a hunting accident or misadventure. He immediately sent for Deputy Thornton and began recording everything his patient said during lucid moments. Over the next 3 days, as infection ravaged the man's weakened body, a horrifying story emerged, carefully documented in Dr. Henderson's journal. The man identified himself as Samuel Morrison, a 29-year-old trapper from Tennessee who had arrived in Arkansas early in 1899 seeking better hunting territory. In late August, he had encountered the Caldwell sisters while scouting trap lines near their property. Mercy had invited him to the cabin, offering to trade moonshine for information on hunting areas. Morrison accepted, seeing an opportunity to establish a supply relationship that might be useful during the long winter months. He remembered drinking from a cup Mercy provided, and then nothing until he awoke in total darkness, his wrists and ankles shackled with heavy chains anchored into bedrock. He was not alone. Other men were confined in the underground chamber, some barely coherent from months of captivity. Through Morrison's fevered account, Dr. Henderson learned that the sisters maintained an elaborate system of underground chambers carved into the hillside. Captives were kept in various restraints, with the sisters visiting occasionally to provide minimal food and water while explaining their divine purpose. Mercy spoke at length about preserving pure mountain bloodlines and being chosen vessels for a divine plan to create a race untainted by modern civilization. She described breeding programs meant to produce children inheriting the strength and intelligence she selectively valued. Morrison described being subjected to conditions he could barely articulate even in delirium, forced into the sisters' twisted interpretations of sacred duty. His escape came through a combination of opportunity and desperation. Temperance had been careless during a feeding, leaving his wrist restraints slightly loose. Over several days, Morrison worked on the chains in the long hours of darkness, eventually freeing one hand. He waited for the right moment, overpowered Temperance during her next visit, stole her knife, and fled into the wilderness. His injuries resulted from the sisters' resistance and his panicked flight over miles of treacherous terrain, driven by the fear of recapture. He crawled, the final miles to Harrison nearly spent, sustained only by the urgent need to warn others of the horrors in the hollow. Samuel Morrison died on September 15th, 3 days after reaching Harrison. The infection had spread too far for the limited rural medical treatments to counter. Yet in his final lucid hours, he gave Dr. Henderson and Deputy Thornton enough information to guide an investigation. The concealed cellar entrance, the layout of the underground chambers, and, crucially, the names of other men he had encountered. men whose families had filed missing persons reports now sitting on Thornton's desk. Morrison's testimony gave Thornton the evidence he needed, but obtaining legal authority to raid the homestead proved far more difficult. County officials doubted the story of two isolated mountain women systematically capturing able-bodied men. The scenario seemed implausible to those unfamiliar with the extreme isolation where the Caldwell sisters lived. Thornton spent 2 weeks navigating bureaucratic resistance, documenting Morrison's account, and ultimately persuading state authorities that federal intervention was warranted. The remote location and the seriousness of the claims meant Newton County could not handle the raid alone. By early October 1899, Thornton had assembled 6 federal marshals willing to undertake the dangerous expedition into the mountains. The raid began on October 8th before dawn, with Thornton's party departing Harrison. The journey required a full day of difficult travel, during which Thornton briefed the marshals on Morrison's testimony, emphasizing caution. The sisters had maintained operations for years through isolation, careful victim selection, and techniques that allowed them to subdue men stronger than themselves. Late in the afternoon, the party reached the hollow. Thornton split his team to block potential escape routes, while he and 2 marshals approached the main cabin. Smoke rose from the chimney, the only sign of life. Thornton called out, demanding the sisters present themselves. Mercy emerged from a heavy wooden door built into the rock face. What happened next was swift and shocking. Mercy froze briefly, then drew a small vial from her dress. Before anyone could react, she drank it and collapsed. The marshals rushed forward, but she convulsed and died within minutes, the poison she had prepared taking effect. Temperance emerged from the cellar entrance, choosing resistance over death. She attacked the nearest marshal with a hunting knife, moving with silent speed that had made her an effective hunter of both men and animals. A marshal fired in self-defense, striking her in the chest. She fell, dying before Dr. Henderson could intervene. With both sisters dead, Thornton faced the grim task of searching the property described by Morrison. The cellar entrance led into a tunnel carved through bedrock, descending into the mountain. Torches revealed an underground complex even larger than Morrison had described. Multiple chambers branched from the main tunnel, some containing crude living spaces with straw mattresses and buckets, others fitted with chains and restraints anchored into the stone walls. The air was thick with the smell of human waste, unwashed bodies, and the unmistakable scent of decay. In the third chamber, they found 3 living victims, not the adult men they expected, but children roughly 3 to 7 years old, huddled together in the dark. The children displayed extreme fear of the physical focus, the impressions left behind. That evening, he quietly revealed his discovery to Elela Nena, expecting alarm or even curiosity. Instead, she only laughed, a soft, almost musical sound that chilled him more than any scream ever could. "Oh, Silas, you truly underestimate him. You always misread what is in front of you. This is not danger. This is discipline. The beast inside him is teaching itself to remain inside the cage. He is proving his worth to us. He is showing that our presence has so much gravity that he must physically restrain his own nature just to exist here." She touched his hand, fingers cool and delicate. "I told you. He is not simply strong, Silas. He is the very idea of controlled force. His existence confirms our influence. Even those little marks on the wall, those dents, they are his silent declaration of our control over his body and his will." But Silas could not forget the marks. Small scars carved by a giant fighting an earthquake inside himself. He wondered what kind of storm lived inside a man who needed to bruise stone simply to stay calm. If this quiet man marked walls to keep his hands steady, what storms did he trap inside his mind? Late that night, the house lay hushed. Silas listened to the wind sliding past the windows, a thin murmur that almost sounded like a muffled, strangled breath. Was it the breeze, or the quiet pain of the man who slept in the shed? He thought of Marcus riding toward Charleston, chasing truths Silas was no longer sure he wanted spoken aloud. The story of Cain was not recorded on paper. It was being carved in faint dents hidden in corners of his own home. The pressure rising was not from outside forces, but from the heavy silence of a man containing too much for too long. Marcus's journey to Charleston stretched into 3 long, lonely days. Dusty roads, no conversation, only heat pressing on him like a judgment. When he finally found Samuel Finch, it was not in some grand house, but in a decaying boarding room heavy with stale whiskey and regret. Finch looked like a man who had been hollowed out by fear more than time. Marcus used politeness and money to open the conversation, setting down a generous roll of bills. "Mr. Finch," he began calmly, "Mr. Blackwood is pleased with the purchase. However, there is a notation on the bill regarding liability. We simply wish to understand it." Finch's eyes locked on the money, but his face remained tense. He took a long drink from a hidden flask before answering. "Liability," he repeated slowly. "The only way I could make sure he left. The man is wrong inside, not sick in the body, sick in the spirit maybe." Marcus leaned closer. "Explain." Finch recounted a story, how Cain never fought, never shouted, never disobeyed. Yet servants whispered that he watched them with unsettling calm, studying them. Then the incident. A massive oak beam fell, should have crushed a man. Cain was far away, yet somehow he was suddenly beneath it, lifting it just high enough to save a life. And when the man looked up at Cain, instead of pride or exhaustion, he saw disappointment, like someone whose experiment had not gone as planned. Then Thomas disappeared. No sign of struggle, no body, only silence. And in Thomas's cabin, carved on a hidden board, 7 marks, 7 slow scratches, like someone counting something terrible. Marcus felt cold run through him. 7 marks. The same number Silas had seen in the wine cellar. Finch whispered, voice shaking, "He is not angry. He is waiting. And when his number reaches whatever it must reach, he will not stay still anymore. I sold him not for money. I sold him to rid myself of waiting for whatever lives inside him to wake." Marcus returned, knowing the truth was not superstition, but a strange, organized restraint. Cain was not acting out emotion. He was measuring it, recording every insult, every humiliation, every test. Silas listened to Marcus in the conservatory, surrounded by wilting plants that looked like forgotten luxuries. When Marcus described the 7 marks, Silas felt the last of his doubt vanish. Cain was counting here too. The house itself had become part of his silent record, and Elela Nena, in her pride, was pushing him closer to the number. She had even begun using Cain as a stool during her reading hours, resting her silk shoes lightly on his broad back while he crouched motionless. Silas saw one day, hidden beneath the table beside him, 3 tiny new marks in the wood. A quiet ledger of pain, a ledger of resistance, a ledger of simmering power. Marcus arrived home with dread clinging to him. Silas met him and heard every detail. When Marcus finished, both men stood in heavy silence. Silas whispered, "He is counting, and Eleanor believes his stillness is obedience. But it is the stillness before a storm. She is adding to his number each day." Marcus waited. Silas finally spoke. "We must slow this before it reaches whatever end he waits for. We cannot sell him. Eleanor would destroy us for the shame. We cannot confront her. Pride would make her push him harder. We must instead give him controlled release. Labor that drains strength instead of storing it." Marcus agreed reluctantly. The next morning, Silas introduced a new plan. Cain would spend mornings on hard outdoor work, clearing heavy land near the swamp, and evenings on silent watch duty to protect the estate. Elela Nena protested. irritated at losing her study subject. "Security," she scoffed. "You treat him like a guard animal. He is a philosophical specimen, Silas, an illustration of controlled instinct." "He must serve both purposes," Silas replied softly but firmly. "Control is still control, even when exercised through labor." Cain showed no change in expression as his new duties were read to him, but his shoulders, just for a moment, seemed to loosen, as if the idea of real exertion relieved him more than any spoken comfort ever could. Torches glowed in the distance, figures gathered, shadows shifting. Cole stood among several men, and beside him, wrists tied, face bloodied, was Elijah. "Stop!" Eleanor screamed, voice tearing from her. "Stop right now!" The men stared, shocked at the sight of a white woman racing across the yard, dress torn, hair wild. It shattered every social expectation. Cole's sneer curled. "Ma'am, you should go back. This is not for you to see." I said, "Stop." Eleanor pushed into the circle, breath shaking, eyes locking with Elijah. His look broke her heart. Not anger or fear, but weary sorrow, as if he had always known this would come and found a bitter peace in it. "Go back," he murmured. "Do not worsen this." "Worse?" She almost laughed, a choked sound of pain. "How could anything be worse than this?" Charles Beaumont's voice sliced through the air. He approached from the house, slow and steady, fury carved into every line of his face. "Eleanor, return to the house at once." "No!" The word exploded in the air. Women did not defy husbands. Not here. Not in front of enslaved people who might see rebellion as possible. Charles stepped closer, voice low and threatening. "Go back, or I will have you carried." "Then carry me," she answered, trembling but resolute, "because I will not leave him." Something flickered in Charles's eyes. Disbelief, shock at the woman before him, one he suddenly did not recognize. "Do you understand what you've done?" he hissed. "Do you grasp the disgrace, the ruin, the collapse of everything I have built?" Eleanor lifted her chin. "I understand that I care for a man with more honor and kindness than you have ever shown." The truth felt like freedom breaking open inside her. "I understand I have spent 15 years as your ornament, your proof of culture, your silent doll. And now for the first time I am alive." Charles's hand rose faster than thought, rage flaring, but the wind stilled for one fragile breath, as if even the night held itself waiting for what would come next. Barely saw it coming. The strike knocked her sideways, lights bursting across her vision, the taste of blood sudden and sharp on her tongue. She heard Elijah release a sound that was half fury, half heartbreak, and saw him surge forward before 3 men seized him, holding him back, their grip firm and practiced. "Do not lay a hand on her," Elijah cried, fighting against the arms that restrained him. And for that instant, the mask of quiet obedience shattered completely, revealing the true man beneath it, the one who had been forced to bury his intelligence, his strength, his tenderness, his fire, and every human feeling slavery tried to crush. "You see," Charles said to the gathered men, voice full of cold satisfaction, "you witnessed the boldness, the sheer nerve. This creature thinks he has the right to defend a white woman, to imagine he deserves anything beyond obedience, to believe he can feel anything except gratitude for the life we allow him. This is what happens when they forget their place." "He has done nothing wrong," she said, pushing herself upright despite the pain pounding through her skull. "We exchanged letters. We talked. But she stopped. She suddenly understood that any explanation would only add fuel to the rage around her. No reason would protect Elijah. No plea would soften the heart made of pride and power standing before her. "You wrote letters," Charles repeated, pulling the folded pages from his coat. "Yes, I read them, every word. Sentimental letters between my wife and my property, between a lady of status and a field worker who by law is not even permitted to read or write." He turned to Elijah, face like ice. "Though clearly you taught yourself, Another offense, another sign of arrogance, another reason strict rule is required. If you harm him, she whispered, voice shaking, I will never forgive you. I will leave. I will make sure every person of influence from here to New Orleans hears what manner of man you truly are. Charles laughed then, a sound almost joyful in its cruelty. You will leave with what funds? Which protection? You are my wife. You belong to me in nearly every legal sense. You may threaten, you may cry, but we both know you hold no real power. You never have. You only had my permission to pretend. The truth crashed over her like another blow. In law, in custom, in everything that mattered, she had no identity separate from him. She was Mrs. Beaumont, first belonging to her father, then handed to her husband. She could not own anything, could not sign anything, could not even step away from the marriage without his approval. She had always known this in theory, but knowing something in the mind and feeling it close around you like chains were two different worlds. Her privilege had always been a cage decorated with silk. Now she saw the bars plainly. This is what will happen, Charles continued, voice like judgment. You will go to your sister's home in Charleston. You will stay there 6 months while the rumors fade. We will inform society you suffered a nervous collapse and need medical rest. People will whisper, but they will accept it. What else could explain such recklessness? When you return, you will behave properly. You will be silent, loyal, and grateful for my mercy in not discarding you entirely. He turned to Elijah. As for you, you have committed multiple crimes. Teaching yourself to read, corresponding with your master's wife, imagining yourself someone you are not. The penalty for such insolence is usually death, but I have a punishment more suitable. Her heart dropped. Death would have been horror, but it would have been swift. The way he said more suitable promised something darker. I am selling you, Charles said. Tomorrow morning, to a cotton estate in Mississippi, the Ricks lands. Even in the flickering torchlight, she saw Elijah turn pale. Everyone knew of that place. It was a sentence disguised as a sale. Life expectancy there was measured in only a few years. The labor broke the body like stone against bone, the heat and punishment finishing what work began. You cannot, she begged. Please, I am pleading with you. I can, he replied, and I will. He will be worked until nothing remains, and you will live knowing it was your foolishness, your uncontrolled emotions that led him to ruin. She lunged at him then, but one of the men held her tight. You are cruel, she cried. He is innocent. We only wrote words. We only felt what we could not help. Innocence is not measured by your feelings, Charles answered. Order is. The laws that divide the refined from the wild, the master from the servant. You shattered that order. It must be restored. He motioned to have Elijah dragged away. Prepare him for transport at dawn. Then he turned to her. Take her to her rooms. Lock the door. Guards posted. She speaks to no one. I hate you, she whispered. For every day I breathe, I will hate you. I can accept that, he answered, as long as you keep it quiet. They took Elijah, and he did not resist. Resistance would have only caused agony and hastened nothing. As he passed her, their eyes held. She mouthed, I am sorry. He shook his head, a tiny motion that said he did not regret a moment, that the brief time of feeling seen, valued, human, was worth every cost. Then he vanished into the night, and she was dragged to her room, voice breaking the humid darkness. Locked inside, she collapsed on the floor and wept until her lungs burned. She had doomed him. Her feelings, her refusal to accept her cage quietly, had become a blade against the only person who ever looked at her and saw more than a title. Love had turned to ruin. Near midnight, noise drifted from outside, yelling, running, and then flames. She rushed to the window. Fires leapt in the slave quarters, small outbuildings, storage sheds, the holding cell. The sky glowed with terrible brightness. She pressed her hands to the glass and prayed. not calmly but desperately. Someone had chosen fire over chains. Whether Elijah or those who dared to help, she would never know. But she prayed with a faith she thought long dead that he escaped, that somewhere in the storm and shadow he was running toward life. The fire was contained within an hour. The main estate never faced danger. But in the smoke and confusion, one fact rose clear. Elijah was gone. The lock on the cell broken. No trace of him. Dogs scent, but the sky opened and rain erased all scent. Search parties spread. Rewards offered, notices sent across towns, but Elijah slipped away like mist. Charles fumed, but there was little to do. An escaped slave was a financial loss, but not unheard of. He had a reputation to guard now, whispers to smother, a future to protect. She was sent to Charleston as planned. She went without fighting, because fighting had already cost more than she could bear. The letters were burned, the story rewritten. A fragile wife, a deceitful laborer, a patient husband. Society accepted it gladly. Reality was too frightening for them to entertain. But she knew, and sitting in her sister's bright parlor, surrounded by polite voices and shallow comfort, she made a quiet promise. She would endure. She would return. She would wear her mask again. But she would never forgive. And she would never stop searching for signs of him. Somewhere, she believed, he breathed. Somewhere he remembered her, and in the thick Mississippi wetlands, moving under stars, drinking from rivers, taking food where he could, Elijah kept moving. His body weak from beating, his hands torn from breaking a lock someone had loosened to give him a chance. He moved still, because he was alive, and he was free. And every night, before closing his eyes in some hidden corner of the wild, he thought of her, her face, her voice, her courage, and he kept going, because hope was dangerous. But hope was life. Charles Beaumont died in the flames that night, swallowed by the fire he had created, trapped in the house he believed he controlled until his last breath. The fire raged until dawn, leaving only a blackened skeleton of the mansion, smoking and broken like the life that had lived inside it. The world called it tragedy. Newspapers would later call it accident. Society would speak of grief and misfortune and the fragility of life. But those who lived at Beaumont would forever know the truth. It was not accident. It was reckoning. The survivors gathered outside as the sky turned pale with morning light. The plantation yard was crowded with shaken, soot-covered bodies. Some stared at the ruins in shock. Others cried softly. Others simply stood silent, stunned by the sudden collapse of something that had seemed unshakable only hours before. Fire changes things in ways nothing else does. It destroys but also reveals. It burns away illusions, leaves only what cannot be hidden. Elelanina sat on the grass wrapped in a blanket somebody had thrown over her shoulders. Shaking through the fire's heat still clung to the air. Dinah stayed close, one hand always hovering near her, as if ready to pull her up and run again should danger appear. Mama Seraphine stood nearby too, a quiet pillar, leaning heavily on a cane someone had pressed into her palm when the smoke made her stumble. None of them spoke for a long time. Words felt too small for what had happened. Finally, Dinah whispered, "It's over." Eleanor shook her head. No, not yet. Because freedom was not just escape. It was what came after, and she was still here, still on this land, still watched by eyes belonging to men who would report everything to the authorities, to Charles's allies, to people who would demand answers. Charles may have burned, but his power had roots, and roots do not die as easily as branches. By midday, riders arrived from neighboring estates and from the city. Officials, doctors, curious onlookers, men with badges, men with questions. Eleanor did what she had done for 6 years, played the role expected of her. The shocked widow, pale and trembling, answering questions with fragile tones and trembling hands. She spoke of waking in smoke, of fear, of being trapped, of servants saving her. She did not speak of locked doors or sealed windows or the heavy beam pinning Charles to the floor. She did not speak of the choice she almost made, to leave him behind, or the choice she did make, to try, even when he had not deserved her effort. Some truths lived in silence. The doctor declared the governor dead from structural collapse during a tragic house fire. Investigators nodded. Witnesses insisted he had been seen rushing back inside to try to save his wife. Men clapped shoulders, spoke of heroism. Women dabbed eyes and whispered about grief and fate. Nobody questioned why so many enslaved people had already been outside when the house fell. Nobody asked why the East Wing seemed to burn so quickly. People see only what fits their world. They did not imagine a governor could be frightened, could be cruel, could be so desperate to silence his wife that he would burn his own home. By the second day, rumor moved faster than the smoke had. Eleanor fainted twice on purpose. Let them think her weak. Weak women are not dangerous. Weak women are dismissed, pitied, left alone. And right now, invisibility was safety. Within a week, officials named her guardian of the estate until a trustee could be appointed. She signed documents with a steady hand she had practiced in candlelight months earlier. She moved into one of the smaller houses on the property, her chambers in the burned mansion now ash. She asked that no rebuilding begin until she recovered. They agreed. A grieving widow's wishes carried weight. At night she did not sleep much. She lay awake listening to the quiet hum of crickets and the rustle of night wind through cane fields, thinking of Elijah somewhere far north under a colder sky, thinking of the pages she had hidden, the record of cruelty and lives stolen and voices silenced. Her life had not burned. It had been carved open. Dinah slept in the same room now, a small cot beside Eleanor's bed. Not as servant, no. As trusted companion, as the person who had risked her life pulling Eleanor from fire. Some lines once drawn by the world could not stand after flames had erased walls. "You still planning to go?" Dinah asked one night, voice low in the dark. "Yes," Eleanor whispered, "as soon as it's safe." "Safe," Dinah murmured with a slight shake of her head. "Ain't never going to be safe, but we'll go anyway." And that became the promise between them, not spoken to the world, spoken to each other, a pact made in smoke and fear and stubborn hope. They continued preparing, quietly, carefully. Eleanor sold jewels through private agents, claiming she needed funds to cover estate repairs. She freed a handful of people quietly with forged papers and sent them north in small waves. She wrote to Elijah again through the hidden network, a letter short and honest like breath. "I survived. I am coming. Wait for me." Weeks passed. Autumn cooled the air. Winter crept in. The ashes of the mansion grew moss at the edges, nature always eager to reclaim what humans ruin. Then, one morning, a rider arrived from New Orleans carrying legal documents and a message from powerful men. Charles's estate must be settled in court. Eleanor was required to appear in the city in January. She felt the tug of time like a rope tightening around her wrist. They would not give her months more. Soon questions would sharpen. Soon eyes would turn too curious. That night she told Dinah, "We leave in 6 days." Dinah nodded once, no fear in her face, only certainty. North. Yes. Together. Yes. And so the last pieces were set. Hidden money sewn into hems, food packed, the records tied in oilcloth and secured in a hollow under loose floorboards, ready to be lifted at dawn. A small group prepared too. 2 families Eleanor had sworn to help go north, quiet souls who had waited months for the night she would say the word. But freedom, like fire, rarely arrives gently. 3 days before their planned departure, riders came again, but these were not men with condolences or legal papers. These wore uniforms. These carried orders. They came at dusk, boots heavy, faces cold. They demanded to search the property for runaways and abolitionist writings. Someone had spoken, someone had seen something, someone had been afraid or loyal or bribed. Betrayal travels fast in desperate places. Eleanor's heart beat like a drum in her ribs as soldiers entered her home. Dinah's jaw clenched. Mama Seraphine stood in the back doorway, leaning on her cane, watching with ancient, tired eyes that had seen too many storms. When an officer demanded Eleanor hand over any private papers, she steadied her voice and asked him to leave her chambers. When he refused, she stepped between him and the hallway, her back straight, grief-widow mask gone, eyes sharp and clear. "You may search," she said softly, "but you will not handle my things without me present." The officer paused, surprised by the steel hidden under quiet. A widow who did not tremble, a woman who did not shrink. He nodded, perhaps sensing something he could not name. They searched for hours. They found nothing. Not the letters, not the testimony, not the money. Because Dinah had moved it all the night before without being told, sensing the air tighten with danger the way people who have lived under threat